Hey, Mike Brookfield here. Week 8 roundup. Is it week 8 already? It certainly is. It's only 20 past 8 in the morning. How's the quiff looking? Not too bad considering. How are you getting on? This week's Etude was really tricky, wasn't it? Head on over to Patreon if you want to work through this and get the tab. It was a really good fun one. I'll play through it for you, and then we'll talk about some stuff and maybe I'll analyze it towards the end. I thought I might talk about my amps today because the other day I talked about my pedal board, and I went to talk about my amps and then went off a tangent and never finished off what I was talking about. So I'll just run through the amps that I have at the moment, and if you want to ask me any questions on them, you can see I tried to make the shot so you could see a couple of them in the background there. So the Etude was, I've got a tremolo and a delay on there to make it a little bit kind of Americana-y. So you've got this. So it's a really nice one to play that because it just works through the chords in almost like a lullaby way. It's based on Need Your Love So Bad, you know, that famous chord progression. So you've got D, D7, G, and then diminished. So this is a very famous chord progression. It's got a lot of elements in it. You know, that's D, B minor, E minor, A7. And then you got the 1 chord to the 4 chord, the 1 chord to the 5 chord. Anyway, I might analyze that at the end of the is it a lesson? Is it? I don't know. It's kind of like a bit of chit chat, isn't it? I'm using the Gretsch today. This is a White Panther from about I don't know, probably 2018 or something like that. It's a really nice guitar. These I've talked about them a little bit before. It's like a Gretsch 335. I have another 335, really fancy one, and this one whenever I pick up my fancy one, I bang it off the table. When I pick this up, it always never gets clanked. So it's kind of something about the Gretches. You just can't clank them. They kind of they're quite indestructible. They're very much like cars, aren't they? You know, kind of like. Or trucks, more like trucks, I suppose. So let me just run through the amps here, and please, you know, feel free to ask any questions. I might make that the PDF for that one available, just so people can kind of get into these things. So so just head over to Patreon. All you have to do is become a free member, and you'll be able to download the PDF of that. Etude. So amps wise, what am I using at the moment? As always, when I'm playing these videos, I use a PV JSX mini colossal 5 watt. It's like a mini champ, and I've used this for quite a long time, and you hear it on a lot of videos. It's just good for playing in the studio. Small wattage amps like that. You don't have to worry about, you know, kind of like using up the valve element, and then, you know, you get to a gig and it's not working. You know, if I was using these all the time at home, you'd be worried that when you took them out, maybe you've kind of used a bit of life in them, you know what I mean, that you needed. So and then I've got the Friedman Small Box 50. That's probably the only amp I really need. because that's just a fabulous all-round amp. Whether I want cleans or dirty, I just use a reverb pedal with it if I wanted some super cleans. And it's obviously got, because it's the Friedman, it's got all the kind of lovely Marshall-y crunch you could ever need. And I never really need super high gain. Like, I'm only ever kind of classic rock kind of gain. And any extra, because you might use a fuzz pedal or something like that. If you want it kind of spluttery and crazy, that's where you'd probably kick in a fuzz pedal or something like that if you want it to hit like Hendrix kind of tones and stuff. So I have like a Zilla cab for that, which is two 12s, and that's kind of like the side by side. Ideally I'd probably like one of the vertical cabs that goes with it at some point, because I find when I'm on a gig, the sound just hits the back of your legs, and I have a flight case for the head, so I usually put the cab on top of the flight case, and that raises it up a little bit, but still it kind of looks a bit odd. Then I'd probably prefer to have a vertical one, just because when you're self-monitoring, if you know what I mean, have the amp kind of close to you. A lot of what I do when I play in a band is kind of like, I'll have the amp set up so it's kind of set here, and I'll stand and sing here, and then when I take my solos I stand there, and it's almost like I use the positioning on stage almost like monitoring, so I'll be playing like that, and then I might kind of like wind, use the volume control, turn up a little bit, and stand in front of the amp, and then I can hear with sustain. And then when I'm trying to sing and play, I just take one step to the side. So it's just a practical proximity kind of way of mixing yourself with, and being in control yourself. A lot of the time I use just earplugs, and I don't always use kind of in-ear monitors. Ideally I wouldn't use any, but my hearing is so smashed, I really kind of have to look after it at this stage. I don't think there's, well, I have permanent kind of like a tinnitus, which isn't much fun, playing with drummers like you can't play with dynamics, just smashing away all night. And so a lot of the time I use earplugs, and if I take one step in front of the amplifier, I get that kind of the feel, it's behind me, I can feel the sustain. Because one thing about playing with earplugs is, because it takes everything down, you tend to overplay a little bit, I find, because you're not hearing yourself as clearly. You play a few more notes than you probably would if you weren't. You would probably, if you were listening just acoustically and open-eared, if you like, you kind of embraced more of the frequencies and the sustain of things. You're more likely to play like Paul Kossoff or something. But when you put the earplugs in, it's almost kind of like you play a little bit more kind of percussively, and you keep moving on, and you keep, which isn't musically as good, a lot of the time. Okay, so that's my Friedman. And then I have this 1973 Marshall 100-watt head. So that's kind of like, that's just have a look. That's a luxury just to kind of have around. I've always liked 100-watt heads. There's something about them, even when you just use an overdrive pedal with them. There's such a width to the sound of them, just the power of them. In comparison to the 20 watts and the 50 watts, there's a perceivable depth to the tone of them, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just the pure headroom, but there's such a beautiful round rock tone of them, and you can cut through the mix easy peasy with them. So I take that out from time to time. I always have to have a backup with me if I have that with me, though. Well, I always take a backup anyway, which brings me to my third amp. I'll tell you about that in a minute. I have another Zilla cab there, and they're kind of staggered 212s. I have two Redbacks, which makes it quite a heavy little cab. I don't know why I got two Redbacks. I think I just wanted something super kind of clean, because I do like kind of clean headroom, and I'll use like just an overdrive because I'm not that heavy a player, and sometimes I play quite clean when I'm doing my surfy type of instrumental stuff as well. So yeah, they're kind of staggered. So that's slightly better to kind of work with on a stage, because instead of being like that and just hitting the back of your legs, it's like that, and you've always got one a little bit higher, which is nicer in a monitoring kind of sense. But I think it makes a lot of sense to have that vertical kind of thing. So what was I going to say? Oh yeah, my fourth amp then, because we have the PV, the Friedman, and the Marshall. So I only have 4 amps, so this is the fourth one, and that's my. I just like this. I've just thought of a 5th one that I have. Anyway, get to that in a minute. The 4th one is the Marshall SV20, the studio vintage, and it's like the kind of classic 60s plexi kind of one. And I usually take that to gigs and keep it in the car, and it's a bit of a backup. So if something went wrong with any of the heads, I'll just go and pull that one and kind of plug that in pretty quickly. I do use a Strymon Iridium if I'm doing an orchestra gig where you can't have an amp on stage. I use that and go direct. Obviously, I'm an amp user. That's my priority thing, but I'm not going to turn down a gig, you know, like a prestigious kind of like orchestra gig just to be kind of old school, because you know technology has moved on, so there's certain situations where it's really important that you just work within the production framework, if you know what I mean. And then the extra amp that I just thought of is my AER Compact 60, which is probably the amp that I've had the longest. I bought that in like the late 90s, I think, you know, when I was in London, and I literally have done more gigs on that than anything, because it's a brilliant amp for drinks receptions and small gigs. And I used to gig a lot with my wife, who used to sing a lot of jazz and stuff like that, and she you know, we did a stupid amount of kind of drinks receptions and jazz gigs, and it's just so easy. You have a little gig bag for it, and you got guitar on one shoulder, a little Compact 60 on the other shoulder. It does not work for rock and roll though, you know what I mean? It is purely just an acoustic amp or a jazz amp. And I currently use it with different kind of folk artists that and kind of like small. I still use it. It kind of broke for a while there, about a few years ago, and I just sent it back to AER, and they gave it a full service and sent it back, and it's as good as new. So it's kind of like brilliant. I think I had to pay a couple of £100 or something, but it's a lot cheaper than buying a new one, because I think they're over £1,000. But it's got a brand new life. I'd say I'll get another 20 years out of it. You know what I mean? Great stuff. So anyway, they're my kind of 5 amps. There was a time I think I had like 12 amps or something like that. When I first, you know, moved into this kind of premises, I had a kind of a big wall of amps, but I have really cut it back to my kind of essentials these days. And like I said, I could probably just get away with just having the Friedman. But on a gig, you do need a backup. You know, if you're doing certain type of gigs, you just can't risk not having a plan B. And then just because like I'm playing so much in the studio, you don't want to be using the life up on that. You know what I mean? You just want to plug, and this goes for the Marshall as well. You don't want to be kind of like, you know, gigging it and playing at home, because tubes are expensive and kind of inconvenient to get. So now, one thing I'd like to say as well, I know a lot of people have given me suggestions over the years, but please keep them coming. And there was a couple of times this week where I went to go, right, I'm going to do a Clapton transcription. And I was really short on time, but I thought, yeah, I've got enough time to do something. And I just couldn't find something snappy in time. So please keep the suggestions coming. For me, obviously, if I transcribe like 13 choruses of a blues, nobody ever works through it. They only ever work through the first 2. So, you know, it's a matter of finding something which becomes a really good lesson. And I think the last 2 that I did are particularly good guitar lessons. The Before You Accuse Me, you can get the tab for that on Patreon for free. Key to the Highway, I think I put that up there as well. And they're from his latest tour. And the brilliant guitar lessons, because he's not playing in an unachievable way. He's playing beautiful blues with such authentic kind of cool, you know, and they're just 2 choruses long, so they're very, very manageable. So you know, have a look out for like, you know, guitar solos, you know, from Clapton or whoever, like which are nice and tidy like that, and you know. But if you pick something like an Allman Brothers live jam and it goes on for 7 minutes, it's kind of a difficult one for me to justify sitting down and trying to write out. You know what I'm saying? What makes a good guitar lesson? And I find this myself. It has to be manageable in its in the amounts that you're taking on. It's better to learn 1 or 2 choruses of a blues really, really deep than just like skimming the surface and nothing sticking within your playing, if you know what I mean. Let me go through this Need Your Love So Bad solo. I really like this one, but I could see why a lot of people would be kind of slightly intimidated by it. Not because it's like super flash and burning and all that. It's when you try to play it, you kind of go, oh yeah, that's grand. And then you try and play it and you go, it doesn't sound, you know, how do I bring the musicality out of it? Well, you know, practice, isn't it? So you'll hear that every now and then I might hit a bass note because we're in the key of D. I might go, you know, it's nice if you just kind of, it gives it that little drone. So you can see I'm going like the 3rd to the 9th to the 6th, and then the root, and I'm hitting a little drone note there, and then I'm sliding into the 6th to the 5th. And remember, I'm talking in intervals. I'm not talking about in frets. So when I say 6th, you'll go, well, he's playing the 7th. But that's the 7th fret, and I'm talking about the 6th in relation to the chord. Because that's what we're doing here, is we're trying to really learn that language of intervals and the notes in relation to the chords and how they function. So, and then you've got this D7. And I'm using this kind of shape, and then when you move it up to like the 7th and 10th fret, it's the same shape, except a little bit wider, but they're all chord tones, because that's the 5th, the flat 7 and the 3rd, and then that's the flat 7, the root, and the 5th. So they're all chord tones. So if you've never used that before, it's perfect little trick for when you're playing on a dominant chord. So it's... So that's again just hitting notes from a D7, and then that 11 is just approaching the 3rd of G. So that's all really just notes within the G major pentatonic. So you got the 3rd, the 5th, the 6th, the 3rd, the 5th, then the root, the 2nd, the 6th, and the 1st on G. You know, so I'm playing like a G6 there. So. But sometimes I'll hit the 3rd string open there, so you get. Then we're on to that diminished chord, and I'm using the diminished shape again. So that's a diminished chord, you know. So that, it's almost like, you know, just playing 2 chord voicing. And then we lead into, and you can see I sneaked in the little drone note, and then sometimes I just pop in the root there, because it gives it that little sweet harmony, doesn't it, when you pop in the B. And then you've got 12, 12, 10, 10. So you could pop in bass notes there. You know, it's just a little run, and people love that. It's the expectation theory. People, you can hear it before it's even happened. That's really hard to articulate. It looks easy, doesn't it? But to get the balance on that. And then just hitting that note because it's the 3rd of the G, and then the 5th of D, and then you've got like, so what I'm doing, I'm playing a note leading into the A, because it's on the A chord, but I'm doing a little pre-bend into it. It just makes it a little bit more interesting instead of going. Similar thing when I'm bending into it. So the influence of our Stevie Rays and you know, Albert King's never far away. So the whole point of these etudes is the balance of technical things that sound good and then the mixture of our kind of blues and trying to make them sound musical. And the fun things that you can just kind of, it's a challenge, it's not too long, it's 8 bars long, won't kill you. Anyway, have fun with that. This video's quite long for a weekly roundup, isn't it? I must try and do them early in the morning more often. Anyway, keep it burning, guys. I'm just going to play it again for fun. Keep it burning, guys.